The boardroom felt like a courtroom. 12 executives sat around the polished table, all eyes on me. My hands trembled as Raymond stood behind his laptop, wearing that smug smile I'd grown to hate. "As you can see," Raymond announced dramatically, clicking his mouse, "Brianna failed to deliver the crucial marketing project we've been counting on." The screen showed an empty folder. My stomach dropped like a stone. 3 months of work, he continued, shaking his head sadly. "And nothing to show for it. The folder is completely empty." I stared at the screen in shock. My project, months of late nights, weekend sacrifices, perfect data models, was gone. Every single file had vanished. "That's impossible," I whispered, but my voice cracked. Raymond turned to face me directly, his eyes cold and calculating. "I'm sorry, Brianna. I know this is difficult, but the evidence speaks for itself." The executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Some looked at me with disappointment. Others seemed embarrassed for me. My mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I had no words, no explanation that would make sense. Raymond's smirk widened as our eyes met across the room. He looked like he'd already won whatever game he was playing. The HR office felt like a prison cell. Miss Patterson sat across from me, her face stern and disappointed. A formal warning letter lay between us on her desk. "This is very serious, Brianna," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Missing a deadline is one thing, but having no work to show at all." I wanted to scream that my files had been there yesterday. I wanted to explain that something was wrong. But who would believe me? "I understand," I mumbled, signing the warning letter with a shaky hand. Walking back to my desk felt like a parade of shame. Coworkers whispered behind their computer screens. Some stopped talking when I passed by. Others just stared. "Hey, Brianna." Raymond appeared beside my cubicle, his voice dripping with fake concern. "I know yesterday was tough. If you need to talk, my door is always open." Several people were watching us. They saw him being the caring, supportive boss. They couldn't see the satisfaction in his eyes. "Thanks," I managed to say. As he walked away, I slumped in my chair. But then, alone in the elevator later, something shifted inside me. I clenched my fists tight and whispered to myself, "You're not getting away with this." 3 months earlier, everything had been different. I remembered staying in the office until midnight, the cleaning crew working around me as I perfected my marketing model. I'd discovered a pattern in our customer data that nobody else had noticed. By tracking social media engagement alongside purchase history, I could predict exactly when customers were ready to buy. "This is revolutionary," I'd whispered to myself that first night, watching the numbers align perfectly on my screen. Raymond had barely paid attention back then. When I'd shown him my early results, he'd rolled his eyes. "Social media marketing is just a fad, Brianna. Focus on something more traditional." But I kept working anyway. Every weekend, every lunch break, every spare moment went into that project. I knew it would change everything for our company. The data was beautiful, clean patterns that revealed customer behavior like a roadmap. I could see purchase intentions weeks before customers even realized them themselves. My algorithms learned from every interaction, becoming smarter and more accurate each day. I remembered one particular evening when Raymond had walked by my desk. He'd glanced at my screen showing the presentation I was building. His expression had changed completely. The dismissive look vanished, replaced by something I couldn't quite identify. "This could make me a star," he'd muttered under his breath, probably thinking I couldn't hear him. Now I understood what that look had been. It wasn't admiration, it was hunger. Back in the present, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those empty folders, trying to make sense of what had happened. At 3 a.m., I crept back into the office using my keycard. The building was eerily quiet, lit only by emergency lighting. I logged into the company server and started digging through the system logs. My heart pounded as I scrolled through hundreds of entries. Then I found it. File deletion timestamp, 2:17 a.m., the night before my presentation. User account, R. Morrison, Raymond's administrator access. My hands shook as I took screenshot after screenshot. The evidence was right there in black and white. Raymond had deliberately erased my work. The logs showed everything. When he'd logged in, which files he'd accessed, the exact time each folder was deleted. He'd been thorough, erasing not just my main project, but also backup copies I'd stored in different directories. But what struck me most was the timing. He'd done this while I was at home sleeping, probably thinking I'd never discover the truth. The deletion had taken him almost an hour. He'd carefully removed every trace of my work. But I couldn't show this to anyone yet. I needed more proof, more time to plan. I printed the server logs and hid them in my purse. Then I cleared my search history and logged out carefully. Walking back to the elevator, I felt a smile creep across my face for the first time since the humiliation. I whispered to the empty hallway, "Checkmate, Raymond," but not yet. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Now I just needed to be smart about my next move. The next morning, I walked into the office like a defeated person, my shoulders slumped, my eyes downcast. I'd practiced this act in the mirror. "Raymond," I said quietly, approaching his desk where several colleagues were gathered. "I owe you an apology." Everyone turned to look at me. "Perfect." "I'm sorry I let you down," I continued, my voice trembling just right. "I know I failed the team, and I take full responsibility." Raymond's chest puffed up with pride. "Well, Brianna, I appreciate you owning your mistakes. That takes courage." The others nodded approvingly. They saw him being gracious and me being humble. "I just want to learn from this and do better," I added, playing the part perfectly. Inside, I was analyzing every micro-expression on Raymond's face. He was enjoying this moment far too much, practically glowing with satisfaction. His eyes held a smugness that confirmed my suspicions. This had been calculated, planned. I noticed how he positioned himself slightly above me, how his voice carried just a hint of condescension masked as kindness. The performance was for our audience, but his true nature leaked through in subtle ways. "That's the spirit." Raymond beamed, patting my shoulder like a proud father. As I walked away, several coworkers gave me sympathetic looks. They thought I was broken, crushed by my failure. But as I passed my desk, I quietly slipped a USB drive into my bag. The label read, "Project Backup Complete." I'd been working on my personal laptop at home for weeks, backing up everything. Raymond had deleted the office files, but my real work was safe. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. My cat, Whiskers, purred beside me as I worked on finishing the project. The backup files loaded perfectly. Everything I'd created was there: the data models, the customer analysis, the predictive algorithms. But now I could make it even better. I added new features I'd been thinking about: real-time social media tracking, automated customer scoring, dynamic pricing recommendations. Hour after hour, I refined and polished. This wasn't just about proving Raymond wrong anymore. This was about creating something amazing. By 4 a.m., I had built something incredible. The dashboard showed live customer data, predicted sales with 94% accuracy, and could track marketing effectiveness in real time. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but satisfied. My eyes burned from staring at the screen, but I felt more alive than I had in months. Looking at the completed dashboard, I whispered to myself, "Better than before." Tomorrow, Raymond would continue his victory lap. He had no idea what was coming for him. No idea that while he was gloating, I was building something that would change everything. Over the next few days, Raymond worked overtime to destroy my reputation. I heard him in meetings, speaking quietly to executives about my instability and how I was clearly in over my head. "I'm concerned about Brianna's performance," he told the sales director during lunch. "This project failure might just be the tip of the iceberg." He whispered to the CFO about my attitude problems and suggested I might not be management material after all. Each conversation was designed to plant seeds of doubt. He was building a case against me, piece by piece. Then HR called me for another meeting. "Brianna," Miss Patterson said seriously, "we've received some concerns about your recent performance. We need to schedule a formal review." My heart raced, but I kept my face calm. "Of course. When would you like to meet?" "Friday morning. Please prepare any documentation you feel is relevant to your work here." As I left her office, I smiled sweetly and said, "I'll have something for you soon." Raymond thought he was cornering me. He had no idea I was setting the perfect trap for him to fall into. I spent the rest of the week helping my coworkers with small problems. When Marcus from sales couldn't figure out his customer database, I stayed late to fix it. "You're a lifesaver, Brianna," he said gratefully. "I owe you one." When Tessa from IT struggled with a network issue, I brought her coffee and helped troubleshoot. Thanks, she said, looking relieved. You're so much nicer than most people here. During our conversation, I casually asked, Hey, how long does the company keep server logs? She leaned in conspiratorially. Oh, everything's archived for 6 months minimum. Corporate policy. Nothing's really gone, even when people think they've deleted it. My heart jumped, but I kept my expression neutral. That's good to know for backup purposes. Yeah, she whispered, glancing around. Between you and me, some managers don't realize how much IT can actually see. We track every login, every file access, every deletion. Perfect. Tessa was now an ally, and she just confirmed that my evidence was rock solid. I was building a network of support, while Raymond continued digging his own grave. The next day, I decided to set a trap. I spent an hour creating fake sales projections for a side campaign, deliberately making the numbers wrong. The projections looked professional, but were completely flawed. Any expert would spot the errors immediately, but someone rushing wouldn't notice. I emailed them to Raymond with a note. Here are the updated numbers you requested for the Johnson campaign. Let me know if you need anything else. Within an hour, Raymond burst into the marketing meeting, waving printouts of my fake projections. I've been analyzing the Johnson numbers, he announced proudly, and I think we're underestimating our potential. He presented my deliberately wrong data as his own brilliant analysis to the entire executive team. Based on my calculations, he continued confidently, we should increase our investment by 40%. I watched from the back of the room as he made himself look foolish with my fake numbers. Before leaving the meeting, I quickly emailed myself a time-stamped copy of the real Johnson projections, proving I had the correct data all along. Raymond had just walked straight into my trap. Friday morning arrived. My formal HR review. I walked into the conference room to find Raymond sitting beside Miss Patterson, looking confident and self-important. Brianna, Miss Patterson began, Raymond has expressed some concerns about your recent work quality and attitude. Raymond leaned forward, his voice serious and concerned. I hate to say this, but I think Brianna might be jeopardizing company revenue with her careless mistakes. I nodded slowly, playing the part of someone who accepted blame. I understand his concerns. Maybe we should let the numbers speak for themselves. Exactly, Raymond agreed, not realizing he'd just given me the perfect opening. My phone buzzed with an email notification. I glanced down and saw it was from Tessa in IT. Server logs attached as requested. Hope this helps with your project review. I looked back up at Raymond and Miss Patterson with innocent eyes. I actually brought some documentation that might be helpful. Raymond's confident expression didn't waver. He had no idea what was coming. Please, Miss Patterson said, show us whatever you think is relevant. I opened my laptop slowly, my heart pounding with anticipation. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Later that day, chaos erupted during the Johnson campaign client meeting. Raymond's fake projections led to a disastrous presentation where our numbers didn't match reality. These forecasts are completely wrong, the client said angrily. Your data shows 40% growth, but market conditions indicate we'll be lucky to break even. Raymond's face turned red as executives around the table exchanged worried glances. There must be some mistake, Raymond stammered. A mistake? The client stood up. We're talking about a $500,000 investment based on your projections. This kind of error could have cost us everything. The meeting ended with the client storming out and our CEO demanding answers. In the aftermath, Raymond desperately tried to shift blame. This has to be Brianna's fault, he told anyone who would listen. She must have given me wrong information. But Marcus from sales, whom I'd helped earlier that week, spoke up during the post-meeting discussion. That doesn't sound like Brianna, he said firmly. She's always been careful with her data. Maybe we should look at what really happened. Other people began nodding in agreement. Raymond's attempts to blame me were falling flat. That afternoon, Raymond cornered me in the supply closet, his friendly mask completely gone. Listen carefully, he hissed, stepping closer until I could smell his coffee breath. You're going to take the fall for the Johnson disaster, or things will get very ugly for you. I made my eyes wide and fearful. I don't understand. You understand perfectly, he snapped. Tell everyone you gave me the wrong numbers. Say it was your mistake, not mine. I nodded quickly, pulling out my phone as if to check the time. But really, I was starting a voice recording. I need you to agree right now, Raymond continued, his voice growing more threatening. Because nobody will believe you anyway. You're already on thin ice after the project failure. Okay? I whispered, making my voice shake. I'll take responsibility. He smiled coldly and patted my shoulder. Good girl, I knew you'd see reason. As he left the supply closet, I stopped the recording and saved it carefully. His threatening words were now preserved forever. Raymond thought he had me completely under his control. He was about to learn how wrong he was. That weekend, I worked like a woman possessed. I polished my marketing project until it sparkled, adding features that went far beyond anything our company had ever seen. The live dashboard could track customer behavior in real time, predict purchasing decisions with incredible accuracy, and automatically adjust marketing campaigns based on performance. I tested every function, checked every calculation, and verified every data source. This wasn't just a project anymore. It was my masterpiece. By Sunday night, I had created something that could revolutionize how our company approached marketing. The system was so advanced that it would take our competition years to catch up. I saved everything to multiple backup drives and uploaded copies to secure cloud storage. There was no way Raymond could destroy this version. Looking at my completed work, I felt a surge of pride and determination. I whispered to my reflection in the computer screen, "Tomorrow, you're done." Monday would bring the quarterly investor meeting, the biggest presentation of the year. Raymond was planning to be the star of the show. He had no idea I was about to steal his spotlight forever. Monday morning buzzed with excitement. The quarterly investor meeting was the most important event of the year, where executives presented their achievements to the board and major shareholders. Raymond strutted around the office like a peacock, shaking hands and making grand pronouncements about how he would be the face of the company's future. "Today's the day," he announced to a group of colleagues. "I'm presenting the new marketing strategy that will take us to the next level." He'd prepared a presentation using basic slides and generic industry data. Nothing revolutionary, nothing innovative. Meanwhile, I quietly approached Tessa in IT during her lunch break. "Remember those server logs you sent me?" I asked casually. She nodded. "Yeah, did they help with your project review?" "They might help even more later today," I said mysteriously. "Can you make sure the full deletion logs are ready to pull up if needed during the investor meeting?" Tessa's eyes widened with understanding. Oh, yes, I can definitely have those ready." She was sharp enough to realize something big was about to happen. "Thanks," I said with a smile. "You might want to watch the investor presentation today. It should be interesting." The investor meeting began at 2 p.m. in our largest conference room. 25 people filled the space. Board members, major investors, senior executives, and department heads. Raymond entered like a celebrity, wearing his best suit and his most confident smile. He worked the room, shaking hands with investors and making small talk about market trends. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began his presentation. "Today I'm excited to share our revolutionary new marketing approach." I sat quietly in the back corner, my laptop bag beside me. To everyone else, I looked like a junior employee who was barely allowed to attend. Raymond clicked through his generic slides, talking about synergistic customer engagement and optimized conversion strategies. His presentation was full of buzzwords, but short on substance. Several investors looked bored. A few were checking their phones. I waited patiently, scrolling through my evidence folder on my laptop. Everything was ready. The real project, the server logs, the recorded conversation, the proof of his sabotage. Raymond had no idea that his moment of triumph was about to become his downfall. Halfway through Raymond's presentation, cracks began to show. He started discussing the Johnson campaign projections, the fake numbers I'd deliberately given him. "Based on our analysis," he said confidently, "we're projecting 40% growth in this sector." One of the board members frowned. "Raymond, those numbers don't align with the sales data we reviewed last week. Our market research suggests much more conservative growth." Raymond's smile faltered slightly. "Well, sometimes projections can vary depending on the methodology." "The methodology should be consistent," another investor interrupted. "These forecasts seem wildly optimistic." Sweat began forming on Raymond's forehead. He shuffled through his papers, trying to find supporting data that didn't exist. "Are you sure these projections are correct, Raymond?" the CEO asked, his voice carrying a note of concern. The room was beginning to turn against him. Investors exchanged glances. Board members whispered to each other. I could see panic starting to creep into Raymond's eyes as he realized his presentation was falling apart. That's when I slowly raised my hand from the back of the room. "If I may," I said calmly, "I have something to show you." All 25 pairs of eyes turned toward me. The room fell completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. I stood up slowly, my laptop bag in hand. "I have some information that might be relevant to this discussion." Raymond's face had gone pale. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Please, Brianna," the CEO said, gesturing toward the front of the room. "If you have something to contribute, we'd like to hear it." I walked calmly to the front, my heart pounding but my expression serene. Raymond stepped aside reluctantly, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you," I said, connecting my laptop to the projector. "I've been working on a comprehensive marketing analysis that I think you'll find interesting." The screen came alive with my dashboard, clean, professional, and clearly sophisticated. Gasps echoed around the room. Real-time customer data flowed across multiple charts. Conversion rates, engagement metrics, and revenue predictions updated live before their eyes. "This system," I began, "can predict customer behavior with 94% accuracy and optimize marketing campaigns automatically." Raymond's face had shifted from pale to green. He looked like he was about to be sick. My presentation unfolded like a masterpiece. The dashboard showed live customer data from our actual accounts, demonstrating how the system could predict purchasing decisions in real time. "As you can see," I explained, pointing to the screen, "this analysis identifies high-value customers 3 weeks before they typically make major purchases." The board members leaned forward, captivated. One investor whispered to another, "This is incredible." I showed them automated campaign optimization, real-time ROI tracking, and predictive analytics that could save the company millions of dollars. "The system has already identified $2.3 million in potential revenue that we're currently missing," I continued, displaying the relevant charts. Raymond stood frozen beside me, watching his career crumble in real time. "This is extraordinary work," the CEO said, his voice filled with amazement. "Why wasn't this presented earlier? This could transform our entire marketing strategy." I paused dramatically, letting the question hang in the air. "That's an excellent question." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "The reason you haven't seen this before," I said calmly, "is because someone deleted all my work files 3 days before my original presentation deadline." Shocked murmurs rippled through the room. "I have proof," I said simply, pulling up the server logs on the projector. The screen showed the deletion timestamps clear as day. 2:17 a.m., Raymond's administrator account, my project folder completely erased. "These logs show that someone with administrative access deliberately destroyed months of my work," I explained. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Board members stared at the evidence in disbelief. Then I played the audio recording from the supply closet. Raymond's voice filled the room. "Nobody will believe you anyway. You're already on thin ice after the project failure." The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to Raymond, who stood frozen like a deer in headlights. His face had turned completely red. "That's not... She's trying to set me up," he stammered desperately. But Tessa from IT stood up from her seat in the middle of the room. "I can verify those server logs are authentic," she said clearly. "I pulled them myself from our backup systems." Marcus from sales also stood, and I can confirm that Raymond blamed Brianna for the Johnson projections, even though she's always been accurate with her data. The CEO's face had turned stone cold as he stared at Raymond. "Security," he said quietly into his phone. "Please come to conference room A immediately." Raymond's meltdown was spectacular. As security officers entered the room, he completely lost his composure. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She's obviously setting me up. You can't believe this manipulation." He pointed wildly at me, spittle flying from his mouth. "She's been planning this. She's trying to destroy me." The investors and board members watched in horror as Raymond's professional mask completely disintegrated. I've given this company 5 years of my life, he screamed. You're going to believe some junior employee over me? Raymond, the CEO said coldly, his voice cutting through the chaos, you're relieved of your duties, effective immediately. 2 security officers stepped forward. Sir, we need you to come with us. This isn't over, Raymond yelled as they escorted him toward the door. You'll regret this. All of you. He turned back to glare at me with pure hatred as the elevator doors began to close. You think you've won? He shouted. This isn't finished. But the doors closed on his rage, and suddenly the conference room felt peaceful again. The CEO turned to address the room. Let's take a 15-minute recess to process what just happened. Word of Raymond's dramatic exit spread through the office like wildfire. Within minutes, every employee in the building knew what had happened. I walked back to my desk as people began emerging from their cubicles and offices. Some were openly staring, others whispered excitedly among themselves. Did you see Raymond get escorted out? Someone said loudly. I heard Brianna had evidence of sabotage, another voice added. As I passed the sales department, Marcus called out, Way to go, Brianna. We knew something was fishy about those Johnson numbers. A small crowd gathered around my cubicle. People who had whispered behind my back after the original project failure now looked at me with respect and admiration. You're like a detective, Tessa said admiringly. I can't believe you gathered all that evidence. You saved the company millions, added someone from accounting. Through the conference room windows, I could see Raymond being walked past all the desks toward the main exit. Employees watched silently as their former department head was escorted out in disgrace. He kept his head down, no longer the confident, strutting manager he'd been just hours earlier. The elevator doors closed on his humiliation, and he was gone forever. An hour later, I was called back to the conference room. The investors and board members had returned, and the CEO was waiting for me with a warm smile. Brianna, he said, standing as I entered, I want to personally thank you for your integrity and remarkable work. The entire room applauded. I felt my cheeks flush with pride and disbelief. Your marketing system is exactly the kind of innovation we need to stay competitive, he continued. It's clear you have exceptional talent and leadership potential. He paused dramatically. I'd like to offer you Raymond's former position as marketing director, along with a 40% salary increase and equity options. The room buzzed with approving murmurs. Several board members nodded enthusiastically. I looked down at my laptop where my project files were still displayed. Months of hard work, sabotage, humiliation, and careful planning had led to this moment, but I hesitated, looking thoughtful. That's an incredible offer, I said slowly. The CEO raised an eyebrow. Is there something else you'd like to discuss? I smiled mysteriously. Actually, there is one more thing I'd like to share with everyone. Over the weekend, I began. I took the liberty of testing my marketing system with some real campaign data. I pulled up a new screen showing live performance metrics. The results have been remarkable. Numbers flowed across the dashboard showing engagement rates, conversion improvements, and revenue increases that far exceeded projections. In just 3 days of testing, I explained, the system has generated $847,000 in additional revenue and improved customer engagement by 156%. The room fell silent as people absorbed the magnitude of those numbers. I've also documented the methodology and prepared a full implementation plan, I continued, displaying detailed project timelines and resource requirements. Before anyone could respond, I quickly opened my email and sent a message to Tech Today, the industry's leading newsletter. The subject line read, Revolutionary Marketing AI generates 156% engagement increase in 72 hours. I hit send and looked up at the stunned faces around the room. The story should go live within the hour, I said calmly. I thought it was important to share our innovation with the broader industry. The CEO's eyes widened as he realized what I'd just done. Brianna, you've just made us the most talked-about company in the marketing technology space. 3 weeks later, I was settling into my new corner office when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I recognized, but hoped I'd never see again. Hello? I answered, though I already knew who it was. Brianna, it's Raymond. His voice was small, defeated. Gone was the arrogant confidence I remembered. Raymond, I said neutrally, this is unexpected. Listen, I know things ended badly between us, he began, his words coming out in a rush, but I'm hoping we can put the past behind us. I leaned back in my executive chair, looking out at the city skyline through my new windows. I'm looking for work, he continued desperately. I was wondering if you might be willing to give me a recommendation. You know my skills, my experience. The irony was incredible. The man who had tried to destroy my career was now begging me to help save his. I listened to him ramble for several more minutes. Excuses, justifications, promises that he'd changed. Finally, there was silence on the line. Raymond, I said quietly, I don't vouch for liars. Good luck with your job search. I hung up the phone and blocked his number permanently. 6 months later, I walked into my expanded office as the youngest marketing director in the company's history. My team had grown from 3 people to 15, and our innovative campaigns were being studied by universities. The wall behind my desk displayed our latest achievements. Marketing Team of the Year, Innovation in Customer Analytics, and Industry Leadership Award. Good morning, team, I said, addressing my staff during our weekly meeting. I know we've accomplished a lot, but we're just getting started. My dashboard showed real-time results from campaigns across 12 different markets. Revenue was up 340% from last year, customer satisfaction had reached an all-time high, and competitors were desperately trying to copy our methods. Let's get to work, I told my team with a smile. As they filed out of the conference room, chatting excitedly about new projects, I opened my laptop and found the original project file from months ago. I right-clicked and selected Rename. The old file name disappeared, replaced with new text, proof that playing nice isn't weakness. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's succeeding so completely that your enemies become irrelevant. Raymond had tried to destroy me, but he'd only made me stronger. And that was the sweetest victory of all.